The letter arrived on a Tuesday, postmarked from a town that had almost slipped my mind. "Dear Richard," it began, "your Uncle Edward has passed away, leaving you his estate in the mountains. As his only remaining relative, you are the sole beneficiary." Excitement bubbled up inside me as I stared at the letter, mingled with a hint of nostalgia and apprehension. Uncle Edward had been a successful entrepreneur, a mysterious and enigmatic figure throughout my childhood. We had rarely spoken, and when he had visited, it was with an air of detachment. The inheritance surprised me, but the prospect of owning a luxurious cabin retreat in the mountains was undeniably enticing. The drive to the cabin took me through the winding roads of the Sierra Nevada, their peaks disappearing into the clouds above. Upon my arrival, I marveled at the grandeur of the cabin. Nestled against a backdrop of towering pines, the structure boasted enormous windows and elegant wooden beams. It was an isolated oasis, miles from the nearest town. My first night was spent exploring the cabin, feeling like an intruder in my own inheritance. I discovered a study filled with books and maps, many dedicated to the local area. There I found newspaper clippings with ominous headlines, detailing the disappearances of young women hitchhiking through the region, prominently displayed on the wall. The unsettling discovery haunted me as I continued my exploration. I found no further evidence of misdeeds, but the stories of the missing women gnawed at the back of my mind. Had my uncle been involved in their disappearances, or was he merely interested in the local mysteries? The following day, I ventured into the nearby town to meet with a few of the locals. Their eyes widened when I mentioned my uncle, but their voices were warm and kind. They spoke of him as a generous man, someone who had donated to local causes and had helped build the community center. When I brought up the missing women, their faces grew somber, but they assured me that my uncle had been as distressed by the disappearances as the rest of the town. As the locals recounted their stories, I couldn't help but wonder why Uncle Edward, a man so kind to strangers, had been so distant with his own family. I pondered this as I returned to the cabin, my heart heavy with unanswered questions. Reassured by the locals' testimonies, I began to see the cabin not as a potential crime scene, but as a sanctuary built by a man who had cared for his community. I spent my days exploring the surrounding woods, enjoying the serenity the cabin offered. As I delved into my uncle's study, I learned more about his charitable endeavors and the causes he had supported throughout his life. Yet, the lingering shadow of the missing women refused to fade. Despite the lack of evidence linking my uncle to the disappearances, I became increasingly obsessed with the mystery. I spent sleepless nights in the study, poring over the clippings and retracing the trails of the vanished women. As I dug deeper into the enigma, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a connection between my uncle and the missing women, a connection that was just out of reach. In the end, the cabin became less of a testament to my uncle's legacy of kindness and generosity, and more of a haunting reminder of the unresolved mystery of the missing women. The idyllic mountain retreat was now overshadowed by my obsession, and I found myself questioning the man my uncle had truly been, even as I tried to honor his memory by contributing to the community he had loved. I remember spending my childhood in the Rocky Mountains. The dense woods and crisp air were an idyllic setting for a young boy with a penchant for adventure. My family's modest cabin was nestled in a lush valley, and every morning I'd wake up eager to explore the surrounding wilderness. One fateful day, I stumbled upon a creature unlike any I'd ever seen. It was as curious about me as I was about it, and despite my initial trepidation, I felt a strange connection to the peculiar being. We formed an unusual bond, and over the weeks that followed, the creature and I grew inseparable. I named it Shadow, for its uncanny ability to blend into the darkness of the forest. Shadow wasn't like any other animal I'd encountered before. Its dark fur and elongated limbs gave it an eerie appearance, but its eyes, black and bottomless, seemed to hold a knowing intelligence. Shadow communicated with a series of soft clicks and chirps, and somehow I learned to understand its strange language. Strangely, Shadow was always careful not to reveal itself to my parents. When they were nearby, it would retreat into the shadows, hiding until they disappeared from sight. At the time, I considered it a thrilling secret, a bond that only Shadow and I shared. But as time went on, the secrecy began to weigh on me, and I couldn't help but wonder why Shadow was so determined to remain hidden. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself spending every waking moment with Shadow. We'd explore the forest together, and it would teach me things no human could: how to track prey, navigate the dense underbrush, and scale the tallest trees with ease. It was exhilarating, and I couldn't imagine a better companion for my adventures. But as time wore on, I began to notice changes in Shadow's behavior. It grew more protective, more possessive. If another animal ventured too close, Shadow would bare its teeth and emit a guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I dismissed these incidents as typical animal behavior, but deep down, a nagging doubt had taken root. In the nearby town, whispers of mysterious disappearances began to spread. Hikers and hunters alike were vanishing without a trace, and the community was gripped by fear. The parallels between Shadow's dark nature and the inexplicable vanishings were impossible to ignore, and my unease continued to grow. One evening, as twilight enveloped the forest, Shadow and I stumbled upon a group of hikers making their way along the trail. I was eager to greet them, but Shadow reacted with unbridled hostility. Its eyes narrowed, and the hairs on its back bristled as it lunged at the unsuspecting hikers. Horrified, I tried to intervene, but Shadow's strength was unlike anything I'd ever encountered. Fortunately, the hikers managed to escape, but the encounter left me shaken. The creature I'd grown to love was no ordinary animal. It was something more sinister, something that shouldn't exist in the natural world. With a heavy heart, I made the decision to distance myself from Shadow, fearing the darkness that seemed to be growing within it. As I withdrew, Shadow became more aggressive, more unpredictable. It would disappear for days, only to return with fresh blood staining its maw. The sight sickened me, and I knew I couldn't continue living like this. I tried to drive Shadow away, to banish it from my life, but the creature refused to leave. It had become a constant looming presence, a malignant force that haunted my every step. The day came when I could no longer bear the weight of Shadow's presence. I packed my belongings and left the cabin that had once been my sanctuary, my home. As I trudged down the mountain path, I could feel Shadow's eyes watching me, its malevolent gaze boring into my soul. And with each step, I felt the crushing weight of guilt, the knowledge that I had unleashed this monster upon the world. No matter how far I traveled or how much I tried to distance myself from the past, Shadow would find me. Wherever there was a deep enough shadow, it would emerge, a constant reminder of the darkness I had embraced as a child. I tried to forget, to move on, but the creature seemed inextricably bound to me, an eternal specter that refused to be left behind. The decades passed, and I became a man haunted by his own shadow. My life was a constant struggle to escape the darkness that lurked at the edges of my existence, always threatening to consume me. The mysterious disappearances never ceased, and I couldn't help but feel responsible for the lives that had been lost to Shadow's insatiable hunger. But as the years wore on, I began to notice a change in myself as well. The line between Shadow and me seemed to blur, our very beings intertwined in ways I couldn't comprehend. I found myself drawn to the darkness, aching to be one with the very thing I had sought to escape. The more I fought against it, the more the darkness seeped into my soul, until I could no longer tell where Shadow ended and I began. In time, I came to understand that there was no escaping Shadow. It was a part of me, a reflection of the darkness within my own heart. We were two sides of the same coin, bound together by fate and circumstance, destined to walk this earth as one. And so I embraced the darkness, accepting the twisted bond that tied me to the creature that had once been my greatest companion. We roamed the shadows together, two souls forever entwined, a living testament to the thin line that separates man from monster. The world would never understand us, but in the end it didn't matter, for we had become something greater, something beyond the comprehension of mere mortals. Together, we were Shadow. As I sit here, an old man on death row, I can't help but reflect on the choices that led me to this point, the countless lives lost, the darkness that swallowed me whole, all the consequences of my childhood encounter with Shadow. I tried to explain to the authorities to make them understand that it was Shadow who made me commit those heinous acts, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. To them, I was nothing more than a madman, a monster who deserved to pay for his crimes. The cell is cold and unforgiving, a stark contrast to the warmth of the mountains I once called home. I can't help but wonder if things might have been different had I never met Shadow, if my life might have taken a different course. But such thoughts are futile, for there is no escaping the past, no undoing the darkness that has consumed me. As the clock ticks down to my final moments, I can't help but feel a strange sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I am free of shadow, the creature that has haunted my every step, the darkness that I could never escape. In the end, perhaps this is the only way to truly break the bond that has held me captive for so long. And as the executioner prepares the lethal injection, I close my eyes and let the darkness wash over me one last time. For in these final moments, I am not a man or a monster, but simply a soul adrift, finally free of the twisted shadow that has defined my existence. I recollect with vivid detail the day Charlie and I embarked on an expedition to Mount Marcy, nestled within the heart of the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York. Our spirits brimmed with anticipation as the thrill of uncovering uncharted terrain beckoned us into the wilderness. Our ascent commenced through a labyrinthine forest, the sun's rays struggling to penetrate the dense canopy, casting intricate shadows upon the earth. Engrossed in our lively discourse, we were caught unawares when an enigmatic rustling arose from the nearby foliage. Ceasing our advance, we stood as statues, breaths held in anticipation of the entity concealed within the verdant expanse. A fleeting glimpse of a hulking silhouette sent a shudder through our bones, but the apparition vanished before our eyes could discern its true nature. Though perturbed, our resolve remained unwavering, and we resumed our ascent to the mountain's zenith. As the day waned, a foreboding presence draped itself over the landscape. Unseen above, the heavens conspired to unleash their fury upon us, manifesting in a torrential storm. The tempest caught us unprepared, driving us to seek refuge amid the deluge. Fortune favored us, and we discovered a sanctuary in a clearing adjacent to a jagged precipice. Hastily constructing our shelter, we braved the violent onslaught of the elements. Inside our makeshift fortress, we sought solace in each other's company, regaling one another with tales of bygone days. The storm's cacophony provided an eerie backdrop to our camaraderie, as if the world beyond our haven had ceased to exist. In a moment of unsettling stillness, we became acutely aware of the oppressive silence pervading the forest. A sudden chill crept along my spine, prompting me to survey the Stygian abyss outside our sanctuary. As if on cue, a bolt of lightning cleaved the sky, revealing the outline of an immense bipedal figure, a stone's throw from our encampment. Fear gripped my heart as I alerted Charlie to the unnerving specter. Together we stared into the void, searching for the elusive figure. But it had dissolved into the shadows, leaving us to question our own sanity. We steeled ourselves against our lingering fears and continued our journey, resolute in our determination to reach the summit. The following day we conquered Mount Marcy, breathing in the crisp air and marveling at the panoramic views that stretched before us. Our accomplishment overshadowed the disquieting encounter, as we reveled in the triumph of our hard-earned ascent. We descended the mountain, our spirits buoyed by the completion of our expedition. The mysterious figure that had briefly haunted our thoughts was left behind, swallowed by the dense forest and the shadows from which it had emerged. Our adventure, though tinged with the inexplicable, culminated in a shared sense of achievement that bound us together as friends and fellow explorers. I grew up in the picturesque town of Voss, nestled in the heart of Norway, where the mountains loomed large and the fjords carved their way through the landscape. My father, a masterful storyteller, would regale me with tales of trolls, gargantuan creatures as tall as the mountains themselves. These trolls, he said, could slumber for centuries, sometimes even millennia, hidden from the world. One particular mountain held a special place in my heart, the one my father and I would often hike together. We dubbed it Trolltoppen, our secret shared sanctuary. The memories of those hikes were some of the most precious I had of my childhood. However, life had other plans for me. As I grew older, I moved to England, married a wonderful man, and became a mother to a beautiful daughter. Years later, when my father passed away, I returned to Norway with a heavy heart, determined to scatter his ashes atop Trolltoppen, the sacred place where we had forged our unbreakable bond. Upon arrival, I found my hometown much as I had left it, though the years had left their mark. Friends and family welcomed me warmly, offering condolences and sharing memories of my father. Yet when I set out to locate Trolltoppen, I found myself lost. The paths we once traversed had vanished, as if swallowed by the earth. I searched for days, enlisting the help of locals, but the mountain that had been a steadfast presence in my childhood was nowhere to be found. Frustration and grief mounted within me, but I refused to give up. I consulted with the town's elderly, those who held the collective memory of Voss, but even they could not provide any answers. Their brows furrowed. They spoke of strange occurrences that had taken place since my departure, but none could point me to the location of the elusive Trolltoppen. I began to feel as if the mountain itself was hiding from me, determined to keep its secrets locked away. Reluctantly, I returned to England, my father's ashes still in my possession. The mystery of the missing mountain haunted me, but life had to go on. I focused on my family, my work, and the world around me. Yet the question of Trolltoppen's fate always lingered at the back of my mind. Years later, while recounting my father's tales of trolls and our adventures on Trolltoppen to my daughter, I noticed her eyes grow wide with wonder. In that moment, it occurred to me that perhaps the mountain had not disappeared, but had merely transformed, as legends often do. It had woven itself into the fabric of our family, our stories, and our hearts. As I gazed at my daughter's rapt expression, I understood that while the physical Trolltoppen had vanished, its essence lived on. It was present in the love between my father and me, and now it would be passed down to my daughter through the stories we shared. Though I never found the answers I sought, I realized that Trolltoppen was never truly lost. It had become something greater, an eternal connection between generations, a symbol of the love and the memories we would always cherish. If these tales captivated your imagination, kindly grace the like, subscribe, and bell icons with a click. We replenish our story trove twice a day to keep you enthralled. Your presence has been truly appreciated. Thank you for lending us your ears, and we'll see you here again next time, where the shadows whisper and nightmares beckons.